Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to this virtual and in-person service at the Idaho Falls Unitarian Universalist Church on this beautiful 11th day of June 2023. Welcome to this place of peace. May we find some moments of quiet contemplation. Welcome to this place of celebration. May our hearts soar with gratitude for the gift of life. Welcome to this place of sacred love. May we gently hold all that is broken here. Welcome to this place of inquiry. Here, may we be challenged to open our minds and hearts ever wider. Come into this place of community. May we together draw the circle of love and justice ever wider. Welcome to this sacred place. Come, let us worship, celebrate, grieve, and love together. If you are watching online, please sign in to the chat box so that we may know who is attending, and it will enable you to send your joys and concerns. I am Ron Goen, and I will be assisting Reverend Kevin Carson, and Vic Larson is their tech guru back there in the corner. We have a lot of announcements this morning. Well, first of all, please silence your cell phones if you have not already done that. On June 25th, there will be a service. June 25th, our service will be a streaming service from Pittsburgh, and it will start at 9:30 rather than 10 o'clock. So please take note of that. Another announcement, we need more volunteers for the Pride station at on June 24th. Yes. June 24th. Saturday, June 24th. Thank you. There will be an open house to celebrate the life of Bonnie Anderson on June 27th at her house between 2 and 6 p.m. in the afternoon at 348 H Street. And there will be a celebration of life for Ruth Barnes here on the 23rd of June at 1 o'clock. The other thing, as most of us know, there will be a picnic after the service out in the garden. And Catherine wanted me to make sure and let everybody know that there's some chocolate mousse bars in the I think it's the refrigerator? Yeah, downstairs. And please help yourself. They will not survive in the heat, so eat them quickly, she says. Okay. Let's see. Are there any other announcements? Okay. For those folks watching online, any donations can be made on the website. Let's see. Please write your joys and concerns on slips of paper back there by Pam, and we will read those after the service. And now, let us prepare ourselves for worship. Calm our hearts, our minds, our breathing. Breathe slowly in and out while I ring the peace bowl 3 times. Our church's covenant helps us remember why we are a part of this faith and why we give our time and our resources to this congregation. If you so choose, please recite along with me the covenant that this congregation has chosen to live by. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. The chalice lighting is accompanied by the words from Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace.
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson. A person will worship something. Have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 360, Here We Have Gathered.
May Good morning. This morning I will be sharing with you a book titled A Garden to Save the Birds, written by Wendy McClure and illustrated by Beatrice Mayumi. It started with a bird. Emmy and I heard it hit our window. By the time Mom came out, the bird was back on its feet. It hopped up to the fence, and then it flew off. Lots of birds aren't as lucky, said Mom. Why did it fly into the window? Emmy asked. Did it want to come inside? I looked at our window, but I couldn't see inside our house at all, just the clear sky. Wow, we didn't know that the bird didn't know that the window wasn't sky. Later, Emmy read all about birds and how there aren't as many as there used to be. We hadn't known that either. That night, I couldn't sleep. I asked, Mom, did you know that all the lights on at night make birds get lost? I didn't know, Callum, Mom said softly. She pulled down the shade on my window. Then she got Emmy. Then we sat in the dark, finding out all the things we didn't know and all the things that we could do. First, we make it so the birds can see the windows. Then we fill the bird feeder. But some things we do to help the birds are the things we don't do. We don't pull up the old dead flowers in the garden because the flower heads and their seeds are like tiny bird feeders too. We don't rake all the leaves away because the bugs that live under them also feed the birds. We don't even throw out our Halloween pumpkin. Even that can be a bird feeder. I tell Emmy, I love not doing stuff. Mom overhears and makes me help her plant bulbs. Now there'll be bluebells in the spring, she says. They help bring birds and insects with their nectar. We sit in the big window and watch the bird feeders. Lots of sparrows, some purple finches. I think they look more red than purple. One guy with a little mask, which Emmy says is a cedar waxwing, a pair of cardinals, and 2 orioles. At night, we turn off the lights on the porch. I never knew so many birds migrated at night. I know now the moon helps them find their way. I like that. All of us and the moon working together. We read that birds who live here in winter need a place to hide from storms and animals. So Emmy and I stack logs and sticks and sticks and sticks as high as we can pile them. It doesn't look like much of a shelter, says Emmy. But later, when it snows, a brush pile has a thick white roof like an igloo, and we can see the bird tracks in the snow around it like little arrows. Even more visitors come for the heated water bowl that doesn't ever freeze. We gave up a whole string of Christmas lights just so we could plug it in. But it was worth it so the birds can drink. I cannot wait for spring, for more birds to come back. I think of them on their journey high up over our dark yard. Well, almost dark. Mom wants to try talking to Mr. Burton about his lights. We tell him about the birds and how it's migration season. Just until May, Emmy says. I remember Mr. Burton had frowned when he saw that we hadn't raked all our leaves. Mr. Burton says, I'll think about it. He shuts the door. Oh, well, says Emmy. But then, just after sunset, I noticed the lights are off in his yard, too. We talk to more neighbors. The Yangs agree to keep their cat inside. Ms. Meyer buys window decals. Eduardo and Dan decide to repair the old roosting box in their yard. The bird feeders are busy, and so is our block. The bluebells bloom. The sunflower sprouts shoot up. The birds aren't the only ones coming to our yard. We get big bees and butterflies. Emmy says we're also helping them. Mom says our garden isn't just growing flowers and berries and veggies. We're growing back the world, too. A little bit, at least. Still, there is more we can do. By the end of summer, our yard has the feeders, the bird bath. Mr. Burton has built a bubbling pond and a feeder, too. Behind Mrs. Meyer's garage is a patch of prairie grass, and across the way, the Yangs have planted milkweed. Eduardo and Dan have built a place for birds to nest, and Mr. Patel just built a rain garden. We put up a sign for the neighborhood. It means we're making a difference. It means that all the yards together, like patches in a quilt, make a welcome place for the birds. I wonder what it looks like to the birds up in the sky. I hope they know that it's real, that it's safe, and it is home. Well, we have one child. She's not in the space, so I think we'll just proceed on to sharing our joys and concerns.
Joys and concerns. Reverend Kevin will light a candle as I read the joys and concerns. From Jim Sathy, a joy. He spoke with Dennis Jorgensen this week. He is doing well in Mesquite. Doesn't need oxygen there. That's why he moved there. That's great. He won $7,000 in casino last week. And sends his greetings to all UUs. That's great. Good for him. From Vic Allen, a joy. He got to spend some time in Rexburg for their Pride celebration. It was great to see all the smiling, happy people of all ages. From Victoria, a joy. Honey and I are heading to Alaska on Wednesday. We will be back in late June. We will see old friends from my 47 years in Southeast Alaska. 47 years. Oh. And from Pam, a joy. Welcome, Randy, Julia, and Megan. Welcome. And lots of joys. And from Pam, a duplicate here. Welcome, Rachel and Laura. And from Kat Reese, a joy. Today is my 18th wedding anniversary. Kelsey turns 12 on Wednesday the 14th. She's going to Lagoon today today. Are there any joys or concerns on the... No. We'll light one more candle for all those joys, concerns, and that are left unspoken.
Before I begin the reading this morning, I want to acknowledge that if you had looked at the website a few days ago, I have switched the topic this morning. And if you were expecting to hear new ideas in quantum theology, you'll have to wait till a later date, unfortunately. I was feeling ill earlier this week, and I just didn't have the time or energy to tackle that complex topic and do it justice for today, so I'll do it later. For some background on today's reading, the U+ project that I'll talk about was started in 2010 by the Reverend Andy Pakula, who is a British Unitarian minister. Project's charter consists of a preamble, 8 teachings, and 12 central practices. I'm going to just read through the charter as our reading, and then I'll talk about it more in my sermon. So the preamble. Unitarianism is a faith that embraces a very broad range of people. The inclusiveness of our faith is one of its great strengths. There is a place for everyone of open heart and mind to find an appropriate path and to journey together, supported and loved in community. One of the concerns often heard in such diverse communities is that it can be hard to find a deeper, more rigorous path, that the diversity has a tendency to keep people at a broad but somewhat superficial level. U+ is intended to address that specific concern and provide a deeper, more disciplined path for those who desire it. As such, U+ is not for everyone. It is not expected to appeal to most Unitarians. It is for those who have surveyed the world's religions and the worlds of religion and spirituality and are prepared to make a more exacting way of living their faith. U+ is not a club or a badge to be worn. We envision that U+ groups might form in some congregations to support those on the U+ path. Networking between U+ groups would further support U+ followers. Individual groups may choose their own approaches to determining group membership. They may be open to all who wish to join, or the group may choose to impose some kind of criteria for group membership based on adherence to U+ practices. In all cases, we would strongly urge that the group membership involves a commitment to the practice and to one another. The authors of this plan offer it freely to Unitarianism. We hope that it helps to provide a unique depth path within our faith's rich diversity. So teachings. Embrace life whole. The sacred or divine, the precious or profound are made evident not only in the extraordinary events of our lives, but in the simple and the everyday. The best way to live is to strive to embrace life fully, engaging our spirits with all of the highs and lows life naturally brings. Potential for goodness. There is goodness in each of us. It can be helped to grow in communities of mutual love, acceptance, and support. There is no complete answer. The universe is too grand to be encompassed in any one perspective or truth. Freedom of belief and diversity of perspective are thus to be treasured and encouraged. Seek relationship. Relationship between us and with other beings is our primary teacher of how to be fully human. Through the support and the challenges of communication and interchange, we grow toward our potential. That which is sacred everywhere. The sacred in life is everywhere, including within each of us. It emerges in relationship and is most evident in our love. In striving to bring forth the sacred wherever it may be found, We serve all beings. Wisdom is everywhere. Wisdom has been uncovered by many people in many different times and traditions. The wise person searches broadly and is open to many influences. We are one. We are interconnected and interdependent beings, part of a greater unity of which we are usually unaware. We must seek an appreciation of our deep interdependence and relatedness. Justice. We are obligated by our unity and our love to work for a more just world where each person has an opportunity to fulfill their potential. Central practices. Dietary responsibility. Adopt a just and compassionate diet. Responsible consumption. Adopt a just and compassionate approach to sourcing clothing, goods, and resources. Reduce impact. Be kind to the earth and others by recycling, reducing waste, sharing, and donating the goods we have. Generosity. Help the wider community. Donate generously to charitable causes. Engage in social action or social justice on an ongoing basis. Community. Join a Unitarian congregation. Attend services and other events regularly. Give generously of your time and talents to cultivate the community. Financially support the community and its programs. Serve your community. Take on service roles in your congregational community. Care for your physical self. Adopt a wholesome lifestyle, avoiding substances and practices that would injure you or lessen your abilities and seeking those that strengthen. Exploration in relationship. Belong to or lead at least one ongoing congregational small group each year that gathers regularly for mutual support and spiritual growth. Individual exploration. Actively and deliberately examine your beliefs and values. Work on a course or program such as building your own theology. Work on unpacking problematic ideas, angst, or frustrations individually or within a group. Spiritual practice. Adopt one or more daily spiritual practices. 11. Annual renewal time. For 2 or more consecutive weeks each year, live a more disciplined spiritual life, preferably with others in your community. This may include spiritual practices, charity work, and adhering to extra dietary restrictions. Finally, pilgrimage. Take on an immersive experience in the world at least once every 5 years. This may serve as a pilgrimage to a spiritual site. An offering to support the mission of this congregation will now be given and gratefully received. Sometime around 2006, I became aware of online discussions among several Unitarian Universalist ministers and laity about the desire that many UUs had to deepen their spiritual practices and commit to a more intentional spiritual way of living their faith and practice. One idea floated at the time was to establish some sort of UU monastery, not necessarily as a religious community where people live together permanently like we think of monasteries historically, but perhaps a spiritual center where people could come and go on occasion to nurture their spiritual needs. It would be like one of the existing UU retreat centers, such as the Mountain Retreat Center in North Carolina, but it would be more structured and focused on temporary residence rather than program-oriented. Another possibility was to establish something akin to the Third Order Franciscans in the Catholic, Lutheran, and Anglican churches, which have ancient origins dating to the 13th century during the life of St. Francis himself. Third Order Franciscans are lay people who have not sworn holy vows or received ordination, but who commit to living according to a set of spiritual guidelines and regularly meet together in local groups for ongoing support. The Reverend Andy Pakula, his U Plus project, I described earlier, is an example of what such a group might look like for Unitarian Universalists. But to date, no such groups or communities have materialized that I'm aware of, other than a few small UU co-housing initiatives started by a handful of seminarians. Even the UU Monastery Projects group on Facebook has gone dormant with no new post for a few years. Protestants have generally disdained monasticism as being far too Catholics after the Reformation, but in recent decades, there has been an upswing in interest among some Protestants about the spirituality of monasticism. Perhaps it is simply too much for most Unitarian Universalists with our long history of being ardent nonconformists who scoff at anything that hints of ecclesiastical authority. And I'm sure that our Puritan ancestors would be spinning in their graves at the mere thought of something so papist as a monastery. Historically, the idea of living in community that tries to fully embrace its principles of our faith in practice did result in the development of utopian experiments in both the Unitarian and Universalist sides of our heritage. In 1841, the Universalist minister Aidan Ballou, a relative of the more famous Hosea Ballou, founded the utopian community of Hopedale, about 30 miles west of Boston, near Milford, Massachusetts. In describing the founding principle of the Hopedale community, Ballou said, "We must not only preach, but live by what we have received as truth, or else renounce it as impractical." For Ballou, this meant a society organized along the lines of how they imagined the earliest Christian communities to have been structured, while embracing the doctrine of universal salvation with all its implications of equality before God. But like many other utopian communities, the practicality of communal living, even among a group that claimed a common religious perspective, eventually overcame their ideals, and the community ceased to function as a collective in 1856 after 15 years. Not a bad run for a utopian experiment. The town of Hopedale, Massachusetts, still survives to this day, including many of the community's historical buildings and a UU congregation. Another example is the more short-lived Brook Farm experiment, which existed from 1841 to 1847 near West Roxbury, Massachusetts. Brook Farm was founded by the former Unitarian minister George Ripley and his wife Sophia. It was based on transcendentalist values and popular European theories about communal social engineering and education. Though it attracted such notable residents as the author Nathaniel Hawthorne, and was frequently visited by progressive thinkers like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Bronson Alcott, Brook Farm fell victim to the inability of even the most principled of people to live up to their ideals in a communal setting. In the case of Brook Farm, they probably suffered from an overabundance of intellectual power and lack of practical organizing and farming skills. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall at one of the Brook Farm community meetings with so many intellectual heavy hitters of the day debating the mundane realities of farm life. For many people, belonging to a faith community is primarily about associating with a place to gather with friends, participate in community, and feel supported. And the pursuit of spirituality is not as important. And there is nothing wrong with that, of course. But for others, and I would say especially for Unitarian Universalists, the spiritual journey is most important. And they seek a home in a faith community that nurtures their spiritual longing and provides the companionship of fellow seekers on the journey. It can be comforting and sometimes challenging to join a Unitarian Universalist congregation because of our diverse theological orientations and lack of dogma and certainty. But we strive to be a supportive community that encourages spiritual growth and exploration. For most people, Sunday services, personal reading, and some personal spiritual practices are enough. And heaven knows people still in the workplace or raising children have far too much on their weekly calendars already. But it is probably a fair criticism that the diversity inherent in our faith has a tendency to keep people at a broad but somewhat superficial level. And for some of us, there is a burning desire to go deeper spiritually and to find ways to live in a deeper commitment to our faith. Though the idea of entering a monastery or ashram may be appealing, it is not a practical solution for most people. So then, what would it look like to experience Unitarian Universalism not just as a chosen faith, but as a more intentional way of life? Is it a question of simply aligning our values with our lifestyle choices, or are there deeper spiritual dimensions required of us? And is it something we can do as individuals, or is belonging to a Unitarian Universalist community essential? The U+ program is one attempt at answering these questions. The 8 teachings and 12 practices they outline are, not surprisingly, very much in line with the principles of the Unitarian Universalist Association. I would even say they are a more articulated set of principles than the current ones in our bylaws because they elaborate more directly on the realities of the human condition. They are not as abstract, and the list of practices offers guidance on how to live up to the ideals we affirm. One of the aspects I really like about the teachings and practices outlined in the U+ program is the sense of balance between the individual and the community. It calls for individual exploration and decision-making, but there is also a strong emphasis on the need for relationships and community, both in philosophical terms and in the worship experience. It acknowledges that we are all in this together, for better or worse, and this is painfully clear when you consider climate change and other environmental impacts. We Americans may value the idea of rugged individualism, but I would argue that true individualism is an illusion at best. I would also say that we are simply better together, and we are genetically programmed to be social creatures anyway. Prolonged isolation may work for hermits, but for most people, some sort of human community is essential for our mental and physical well-being. Another aspect of the U+ program I like is the balance between practical worldly issues and the importance of spiritual practices at both the individual and community level. While many critics of religion would agree with the practical principles, such as engaging in social justice and making choices in dietary and other consumption, they would likely dismiss the importance of spiritual practices. And I believe this is a mistake. Whether our human inclination to spirituality reflects some mystical connection to God, the Tao, or the creative unfolding of the cosmos, or whether it is simply an emergent quality of how our brains are wired, we need to acknowledge this fact and connect with the spiritual side of life to experience our full humanity. We are spiritual as well as biological creatures, and to deny our spiritual nature is detrimental and tragic. In the U Plus program, I like the call to seek wisdom wherever it can be found, the call for setting aside time for annual renewal, and the idea of pilgrimage. Many people have little free time or financial resources for a retreat or pilgrimage, but such practices need not be lavish or exotic. Simply setting aside a regular time to sit in a park or some other setting, such as an art museum or your own garden, can become a cherished spiritual practice. And if you want a cheap pilgrimage close to home, take a nice long hike or camping trip. Spending months on the Appalachian Trail or walking the Camino de Santiago across Spain can be a life-changing experience. But the same can be true of a shorter pilgrimage journey to a sacred or special place. Something like the U Plus program is an interesting project, but as the author plainly acknowledges, it is not expected to appeal to most Unitarians. And as I mentioned earlier, more than a decade later, I don't know of any U Plus organized groups that are active. And in my own experience, I have heard many people express a desire for deeper spiritual practices over the years, but nothing I have tried to facilitate so far has really taken root. Many churches offer meditation groups, but even these are usually poorly attended by only a handful of its members. It is remarkably hard for busy modern people to find even 20 minutes a day to set aside and settle down and quiet our minds, let alone trying to live a more rigorous, disciplined spiritual life. Even as a minister, I find it hard to make adequate time for personal spiritual reflection. The world seems determined to distract us from our inner selves. Most of us are already doing some of the practices in the U Plus program prescribes, whether we realize it or not. We are living a Unitarian Universalist life when our principles and values inform our daily decision-making and consumer choices, and when we participate in the life of the congregation. We are true to our faith when we vote or participate in public witness in support of our neighbors and friends, as we did in Rexburg yesterday. I often say that ours is a difficult faith, but despite the common misperception that it is an easy faith because we can, quote, believe whatever we want to believe. I say it is difficult because it is a faith that offers no easy answers for spiritual seekers, and it must be lived into being for it to have meaning. For us, it is not enough just to profess a creed or participate in ritual sacraments, though rituals are aesthetically important to religious life. We call our faith the living tradition, and celebrating life is more important to us than worrying about whatever mystery awaits us in the end. There's a Buddhist saying that life is filled with 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, and we must experience them all. Our faith understands this and recognizes the sacred and the profane in the world through which we journey. I would encourage each of you to take the time now and then to reflect on our Unitarian Universalist values and principles as they are expressed in your own lives. Consider if there's something more or different you might do to deepen your sense of Unitarian Universalism as a way of life. Even recognizing a small change can make a difference. If you're interested in something more rigorous, you will probably have to find your own way forward, given our history. But something like the U Plus project may offer guidance. And most importantly, remember that you are part of a religious community that is here to support each other. You are not alone in your spiritual struggles and life's challenges. There are so many possibilities to explore, and the world desperately needs the healing our faith can contribute. So however you choose to express your faith, I hope we can always embrace our Unitarian Universalism as a way of life. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit again and join in singing our closing hymn, number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All.
Life is the greatest gift of all the riches on this earth. Life and its creatures, great and small, of high and lowly birth. So treasure it and measure it with deeds of shining worth. Mind is the brightest gift of all, its thought no barrier mars. It seeks creation's hidden plan, its quest surmounts all bars. It rings the wind, it chains the storm, it weighs the outmost stars. We are of life, its shining gift, the measure of all things. Up from the dust our temples lift, our vision soars on wings. For seed and root, for flower and fruit, our grateful spirit sings.
Our closing words are from Henry David Thoreau. A lot of you will probably recognize them. Why should we live in such a hurry and waste of life? We are determined to be starved before we are hungry. I wish to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life. I wish to learn what life has to teach, and not, when I come to die, discover that I have not lived. I do not wish to live what is not life. Living is so dear. Nor do I wish to practice resignation unless it is quite necessary. I wish to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life. I want to cut a broad swath, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. Or, if it is sublime, to know it by experience and be able to give a true account of it.
Please join with me in reading the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.